Okay, welcome. Can everybody hear me? Let me check in the events discussion if you can. All right, good. New headset, so been a little bit nervous about it every day. Feels like it's been a long time since we had one of these, right? Been a lot of days. Had a nice vacation. Um, Pretty big session today. We're gonna have some pretty interesting news for you. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Examiner shipping status and where we currently are on the stuff. I'm kind of going to drag my feet here because we've determined that there's something weird that happens on these events that about 4 minutes in, suddenly a bunch of people get the event notice or something. I don't know what it is, but there should be about another 40 people that show up all at the same time. So I'm just going to kind of just talk over it. I should have just let you keep listening to the fish, but your bosses probably wonder what the heck's going on over there. So I decided to cut it off. As far as the Examiners go and where we're at, I want to just give everybody a little bit of an update because things are really starting to flesh out now, and it's pretty good, and the news is getting better and better. Look, when we started the orders and said when we thought that they were going to ship, we were a little aggressive on it. I had a lot of long history with integration, so I felt like I could kind of crack a whip and really get these things spun around with an integrator. But, shit happens, and ultimately it took them a little longer to get really up to speed. China New Year got in the middle. We did have a little bit of problem sourcing components, but ultimately we've kind of come to the end of all those challenges, and that they've started building now for several weeks, and we kind of know what they could do on their base case. And it turned out that they were turning about 75 units around. There's been the typical, stuff in learning a new system build where they spin some units that aren't exactly right. And so they're learning and, getting their checklists all done and everything. And the next step now is they're in the process of ramping up. So I'm told that next week we should get into a mode where they at least double, but maybe even triple the amount of systems going out. And that's good because our goal or our hope is to have the majority of the units out the door by the end of March. And, that'll put us a little bit behind, but it won't be that far behind, and it's still well in advance of the launch. So I think it'll be in pretty good shape. And what we're seeing right now is pretty good in that of all the units that have been shipped out in the first, couple of weeks of their integration, they're all coming online, and we're not really seeing a huge amount of tech support. It's a bigger amount of tech support than what used to be there because, there's just more systems going out. So I don't know what it looks like to the average person who chimes in on the forum, but it ought to be actually looking good because it is good. And we do have a other wrinkle, and I'm going to talk about it because, it's hard, and I guess I'll blame age on this one, even though I've been around online video probably longer than anybody here. But the deal is I still don't always think about how, social works these days. And, we have an issue that came about on these Examiners where it was a component supply chaining situation. So, we started out with one platform motherboard. Yeah, here comes the 40. I got to figure out why this does this. And then, so this is 6 minutes today. So I guess we'll do 6 minutes next time with the fish. But anyway, the deal is that we bought a whole bunch of motherboards from the Taiwan vendor that we, wanted to use on these embedded systems. And we ran out their stock really quickly, and they couldn't, deliver more. And so we were looking for additional components, and there were some really hard problems in December on this stuff. And we found the second manufacturer, who's one I'm long familiar with. They make great stuff. I'm really pleased, with their products. And so finding an embedded system that they had some quantity on was fine. And I was happy to have multiple platforms. It's not an issue with this kind of a build. We'll still be able to service it just fine. But we rolled this second motherboard into 60 units, and they tested out fine in our R&D in our lab. But we didn't realize that they had a retail version of this board. So my bad. In our testing process, we went with the UEFI version that was originally shipped. And what this led to ultimately was the fans all shipped on these units running at a lower speed. And in the lab, we put them through some pretty intense burn-in, processes, but we never failed one. I mean, they just worked. And so we felt really good about the platform, and we shipped it. And then what happened is we started getting some weird, tech support about these random offlines, and just the profile looked pretty similar on a number of units. And then I started to put two and two together. I said, these are all this one motherboard. So let's figure out what's going on. Long story short, we found out that there was a new UEFI version that was available. I found it by talking to the rep, and he, asking him to build a feature in there to allow us to do more precise fan control. And, it just is what it is. So what ended up happening is we spun up a software to allow users to go into the console and be able to update the UEFI. UEFI is, if you're a computer person, is what used to be known as the BIOS. It's the computer code that's in the chips on the motherboard themselves that control the hardware. And so this update on this BIOS needed to happen in order to get the fan spinning at the right temperature or right RPM, so that the motherboard and everything would run at the right temperature. And so that has solved, a lot of problems. But we spun out an email on that saying to everybody this was an urgent case, because we found about 3 or 4 units that if they were left, long enough at this temperature variation, that what was happening is that files were being corrupted on the system drives, the SSDs on the system drives. And we're still not sure yet whether, the actual drives are being damaged. We still need to bring some of these these 3 or 4 that are in this spot back to the facility and actually put them through a forensic process and understand it. We did kind of go through an intermediate step where we were going to re-image some systems in the field, but I just finally made a decision today, as a matter of fact, that what we're doing is if they go past the UEFI flash and it still shows some problems with file corruption or some other stuff in the boot, that we're just going to RMA those systems. And so we're just, working one by one with the people and just walking them through it and sending them back. It's a small population in the whole thing. It's like 50 units that are out there. And of the 50 units, it's like 1 out of 3 turns out to be one that ends up needing to have a little more hand holding so far. Might even be less than that when it's all said and done, but it's not, a huge number of systems. So, of course, we were shocked to find that there are already videos online. And of course, that process then turns around where everybody's out there getting these 1,000 units saying, well, hey, do I need to update my unit? Is it going to burn up? Are there problems? And, it's not that. It just isn't. So someday I'll get used to this and understanding that, people will just run with the stuff as fast as possible. And, because news sells, and it's really kind of become a thing. At the end of the day, we're solving the problem the way we know how, and we're going to take care of those customers and, get them what they need in terms of new units and so forth. And if you're getting a unit, or you've recently got a unit, you don't have to worry about it unless you got the email. If you didn't get the email, you don't have an issue, and there you go. So anyway, I wanted to get past that. With the new units, hopefully all getting shipped out here over the next 2 to 3 weeks, what I'm expecting to do is at the beginning of April, open up the purchases again. And what we'll do there is we will take the wait lists that we currently have, put them in order, and then we will send out an email to everybody on the wait list, granting them a ticket into that process so that we can then go ahead and start booking orders. The orders will be, interestingly enough, against 3 models probably again, but this time it will be a 16 and a 64 on the flagship. But and this whole call is going to be this, by the way. So there's news being made here in everything that I'm presenting. We are going to be taking with us at our product launch a new 1U rack mount industrial version, which will be Xeon based, and be already pre-configured from a manufacturer. We've already got one in-house and are testing it. And at the end of the day, that unit will show up when we go to do the product launches. So that will be one of the options that's available to purchase when we open up the purchasing again. What'll end up happening is same as last time on these waitlist openings is that we'll be doing pre-orders again. And the good news is that if you do end up being one of the people that end up, getting early in and purchase the 1U, those should ship up to a certain number. I think the stock we currently have available to us something right now is like 300 or 400 units. So there'll be some units right away that we'll be able to get out, within a few weeks. And then the rest of it will be the same thing as we're doing right now, except that we already have an integrator partner now in place and we'll be able to, cut the time down significantly. So that's that. Tying that up with what we're doing next month, I'm about ready to launch a social media message about the product launches. If you haven't been made aware of this, if you go to the Vegas channel in the Discord here, we have a web page put up. I think it's XNS launch after scpri.me. And on that page is all of the information about an event that is happening in Las Vegas between April 23rd and April 27th. It's called the NAB show. It's a media and entertainment show. And what we'll be doing there is launching the actual cloud storage product. We'll also be launching some of this Examiner stuff, and we'll have both products represented very clearly there at the show. We've been really fortunate in that because of the post-COVID world, we were able to move up our booth to the front of a brand new hall. We actually got right next to the AWS booth, which is a giant booth. So if you haven't sort of been paying attention to any of this, definitely check in on that. And we really would like to see you out there. We're going to be giving away 3 Examiners at the show. So you will have a chance to actually end up with a unit right directly from the show. There'll be the units that we actually have in the booth that we'll be displaying, and then at the end of the thing, we'll ship them directly off to the people, or you can come and get them last day of the booth and take them with. We're going to have a whole bunch of other giveaways. We're going to have a big community party on April 24th. There are tickets required for that. Right now, the tickets are free, but they will turn into $25 tickets shortly. So you should definitely log in and grab your ticket now. You can get those on that website. It's scpri.me/XNS launch. And you can get those tickets. You can get hotel accommodations from the website. You can get directions and timing for the event and all the stuff that's going on there. So we really recommend you kind of get out there and join us in Las Vegas because it's going to be a great time, and we're going to really throw a bash for the community. So I would heartily endorse everybody showing up. There's going to be a keynote by myself. It'll be one of these. I won't take the whole 2 hours on it. It's going to be a short one, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're announcing at the show and show some stuff there. So yeah, come and join us and have a great time with us in Nevada if you can. Okay, so that's that piece. All right, so this next one's going to be pretty interesting. Before I get to the nuts and bolts of it, what I want to do is talk a little bit about the Examiner software, because I think it's a really important component of what's going to happen with everything going forward. I've restructured the corporation a little bit over the last couple of days. And what I've done this for is because, we've done okay in the way this has gone. I've never run a software company before, so this has all been a pretty good learning experience. And at the end of the day, we did okay, but things have been kind of slow, and, we haven't kind of moved it with the alacrity that we'd want to. And, we didn't really have the kind of ownership of products that I thought we really needed to have. And then I realized that we actually had 2 products, and we weren't really reflecting that in any way. So we have an interesting situation where if you take the core protocol that we have built on, the protocol that we've worked, and this is the part where I do congratulate and thank the former product people or project people, because this is the piece that I think they did a good job on, at least envisioning it and, building the base foundation of it. It's called the renter host protocol. And in this equation, the two products that we have, the examiner and the relayer, are the renter and the host. I actually said it backwards. The relayer is the renter, and the examiner is the host. Not sure if somebody just DM me something. I don't know. So the deal is that we needed to sort of realign product teams, and what we did is now that we have a lot more people kind of in the team, we've essentially split it up into sort of two pizza teams, and each one has ownership over the individual product that they're doing. So I think this is going to really create a lot more internal ownership and pride in the products that are being shipped, and probably give us the ability to push things out a little bit quicker, as well as to do a more thorough job of it. And where we're currently at right now on the examiner is that, it's done okay. I mean, when we shipped it at first, it was kind of really, there was a lot of Flintstoning going on with this thing. We shipped it, and then, people would have issues, but we would sort of like contact them and sneak in. They'd give us access. We couldn't do it. We couldn't sneak, but they would give us access. We'd remote in, we'd fix the problem and leave. It was like Robert De Niro in Brazil. So the deal is that was untenable, and I knew it was untenable, and kept trying to kind of convince us to stop doing it. And then ultimately I just figured out a way to make it so that we stopped doing it. We did. But at that point, we started to expose that we did have some actual challenges in the software, because we're trying to do a lot with supervisor and SPD. And a DIY running, SPD is a matter of just, giving it enough space so that it doesn't run out of metadata space, and giving enough memory, and not, running the UI, and really you can just turn it on and leave it and not have to really pay much attention to it. But we're doing a whole bunch of other things on top of it, and we plan to do a lot more. So we've been rewriting those back-end pieces, supervisor and super admin, and ultimately we're at version 0.84. I think there's probably going to be about 6 or 7 more dot upgrades before we get to April 24th. And then we'll hopefully release 1.0 at the show, or a week before the show, or somewhere right around that sort of time frame. We know we aren't going to get in all the features that we really want for version 1. So there will probably be some pretty rapid iteration that will happen sort of after the show. Some of the things that we want to have that we know are not going to be in there at the show, but will happen, sometime in the spring and summer time frame, are a true accounting. Right now accounting on this thing is just really awful. And, getting this second layer contracting, which happens sort of in an invisible fashion, is really a challenge, because little microtransactions are taking place all the time that are not being reflected on the blockchain, but that are being reflected in the wallet. And, that's a challenge, because it's really hard to explain. It's hard to really kind of capture. And at the end of the day, that's really going to be a huge thing that we're going to add to the deal. Mobile app, is something that'll probably be pretty simple to roll up, but the experience of setting up an examiner right now is really kind of 1990-ish. It just doesn't feel modern, and it doesn't, you want to be able to have something that's a lot more Apple-like and very much, guide you through it. Remote access is critical. That one is probably going to be one of the first things that will roll in, and I'm hoping we can get some form of it in before version 1 is done. Auto re-announce and some of the other things that we're currently doing, those things are in there, but they need a little bit of help because of the way SPD works and, some of that stuff. So by the time we get to the product launch, we're going to have a very robust examiner software, and that robustness is going to continue to improve pretty dramatically over the next 6 months. And if you're a DIYer, you're probably, sort of sitting there, shaking your head, let's say that, and, saying, geez, I wonder if we're ever going to get any of that stuff, or if somebody's going to build it for us, and the third party, stuff, or, how we're going to end up actually succeeding and surviving. Well, I'm going to announce that I have some good news, and for some people, they may look at it and say, "Well, I don't know if that's good news yet or not. I'm going to have to go back and process this and think about it." Um, I'm here with announcing that at the show launch date of April 24th, we are going to be licensing the Examiner software to the entire community. If you have a DIY host, you will be able to purchase and run the Examiner software on your unit and get the features that I just described on the run-of-the-mill hardware. Now, the way that will work is the installer will put a Docker container on there. You'll end up running the version of Linux that we're running on our current Examiner platforms. And it'll be a very much consistent installation on the standard version and above. So let me kind of work through all of this stuff, and so you can kind of break it all down and take notes and figure out, where you fit in. So to begin with, there's going to be purchases of 3 tiers of license available. The purchasing will begin almost immediately next week. I'm envisioning you'll be able to go on the website and start purchasing software licenses. There will be a base case version, there will be a standard version, and there will be a full version. And so before I talk about what's in each version, let me tell you what's at stake here and what's going to happen so that you are fairly in the know. And I recognize that this is going to cause a lot of people to have to go back and think really hard about how they're going to approach our project and our network going forward. But just like we do with everything, we've thought about most of this stuff. So if you don't hear the answer right here, come back in a day or two and re-listen to this, and you'll probably pick up on the answer that you were looking for in a re-listen. Forthwith, after the product launch goes forward, we'll have a grace period of some time frame. I'm thinking 60 days at this point, because that gives it enough that it's padded, but it doesn't push it too far after the product launch. After that grace period's over, if you don't have a software license, you will not contract with any of our relayers, and you will not get any data. So this is a mandatory license. You're going to have one of these licenses to run your instances on our network. Okay? That's the key here. And at the end of the day, everybody who does have one of these licenses is going to be on equal footing to get data. So it's not like this thing that I've been saying all along. Well, it is actually, in that I'm saying that Examiners are going to be favored. The only difference is now you're going to be able to turn your DIYer into an Examiner and not be at any sort of, deprecation because you aren't a official Examiner. You will have and be running an official Examiner on your units, going forward. So that's the deal. And what we're envisioning is on this base version would just be the CLI and SPD. Essentially, it would be the standard configuration you're already running. You wouldn't be required to run a Docker. You wouldn't have to run anything else. You just run the current installation that you're running. And the subscription cost on that, we're starting out as a $99 a year subscription for that base case CLI version. The second version up the line is a standard version that we're calling, which would include the Docker container, supervisor, and the UI. It will be a somewhat crippled UI in that there will be a couple of features in there that will be reserved for the full installation. Haven't yet sussed out exactly which features those are going to be, but by next week we'll have that nailed down and laid out. But it's the typical thing. You'll get a good working version that does a lot of really cool stuff. And then if you really want to have the whole, Cadillac experience, you'll have to upgrade to the full version. That second version, the standard version, we're calling it, is going to be $220 with a $99 yearly subscription re-up. So you pay $220 for the first year, and then after that, it'll be $99 on an ongoing basis. And then the full version will be identical to the Examiner hardware that we're selling and will continue to sell. And that piece will be $450. in the beginning with a $99 yearly subscription charge. And, if you're somebody coming in from Chia and you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of terabytes, you're going to want to have that full version, because that's where we'll be rolling in the features that will allow you to have really solid disk management across giant farms and platforms like that. Not saying you can't run it on the CLI, because you can, but at the end of the day, we're going to make it so compelling that the 450 is going to be kind of like peanuts to do it. At the same time, on those two top versions, the standard and the full, we will also have some rebating built into that. So same thing as we're currently doing on the hardware. You'll make those payments, and then at 3 months and 6 months, we'll have money, some percentage up to probably 50% coming back to you. So that kind of answers the question a little bit of, well, what happens in the first year when I'm only getting, 800 gigabytes of storage, but I paid more for that than that for the license. Well, that's kind of part and parcel with the coin price speculation that we're all sort of engaged in here. But it's also going to be handled a little bit by the rebating process. And of course, the one thing to sort of take home from all of this is that in addition to being able to fund and pay for the development of the software that's going to be building and continuing to build out the relayer infrastructure so that we can onboard as many potential customers as we possibly can. In addition, some percentage of the revenues that we pull in from these sales will go directly to marketing and sales. And that's just a thing we don't have right now. We don't have a very big budget marketed for marketing and sales, and we need it. We're going to be spending quite a bit of money in Las Vegas to do this product launch. We're going to have some live streaming. We've contracted right now with a streamer, and we'll announce and say who it is and so forth as we go forward. But we're going to be doing live from the show floor daily events. We're going to be doing a Zoom call for the entire community, much like this, live from the show floor. We will actually stream from the community party meetup, so there will be some stuff there, and I think you'll enjoy some of that. But you still want to come. Don't couch tour this one, because at the end of the day, it's going to be more fun to be there. I guarantee it. You've been locked up for 3 years. It's time to get out of the house. COVID's over. Time to go. So anyway, getting back to this licensing strategy. So what we're probably going to be doing at the same time that we offer these licenses to the regular community people and, to put them up on for sale for people to join the network, we will also be making licensing schemes available to resellers and manufacturers, so that manufacturers that want to build devices in Europe or Asia or anywhere else, we have some people trying to build them right now. They will be able to bulk purchase licenses from us at a discount, and then they will be able to actually slap an Examiner logo on their systems that we validate. We're going to make them go past a certain validation standard to ensure that the units are built to our quality standard that we want to see on them. And then ultimately, you'll be able to buy one from any number of manufacturers and know that you're getting the same software and you're getting the same quality and you're getting essentially the same unit that you would get if you bought a unit from us. So that's something that's coming as well. We're going to continue to build and develop and sell systems. I don't know how deep we'll get into it, but I don't think we're going to stop selling systems ourselves. And there are always people that want to, buy direct from the source. So we understand that. Terms of service and stuff behind the license will still rely on uptime to determine the amounts of data and that you end up getting into host sets and getting data uploaded from stuff. One of the things, though, that we are going to nail down very solidly in that process is, we've said that the relayers will have some ability, and the MSP and storage partners that provision the relayers will have some ability to define the host sets a little bit, but it's going to be fairly minor what they can do, in that we're not going to allow an MSP to turn around and say, this relayer is only going to be on 30 providers that I own. or people that I know own. We're not going to do that. It'll be something like 10 to 20% of the number of providers in the provider set can be specifically specified by the MSP partner or whoever. And then the balance will have to be determined randomly based on telemetrics, based on how good you are. You know, your quality of service, your latency, your proximity to the relayer itself, your price that you're offering, your incentives-based features will determine if you get more data than everybody else. We want that competitive component to be in there, and we want everybody to fairly get data instead of having it be any some sort of socialist thing where, you know, we're deciding who gets it and who doesn't, and you know, that sort of thing. It's we've always planned to have a significant market structure underlying it, even though the incentives on top allow that market structure to be actually, you know, turned into something that actually works without being a straight race to the bottom. So that's the situation there, and so forth. There's an internal question. I'm going to say it's unresolved at this point. It's kind of resolved in my mind, but I can still be talked out of it. We've talked about actually reopening the door to any platform, allowing anybody who wants to build on anything to come back into the deal, and be able to get data from the relayers and have it based solely on durability and uptiming. And I'm still of a mind that I think that's what's going to happen. It may be that we limit what the full version or even the full and standard version can run on, and maybe, you know, the base case CLI can just run on anything. I'm not really clear yet. We'll work that out before we launch the web portal for purchasing next week. And then again, the last thing is the continuous time and service incentives are literally going to be key and critical to this thing. So what we will likely have is we will likely have a situation that says that, yes, we're going to rebate these units, but the rebates will probably only last for like 90 days. So if you get your licenses purchased, you know, right away here leading up into the show or shortly after the show, then you will get those rebates that we talked about, and you'll end up paying significantly less than everybody else. If you don't get in those 90 days, then what will end up happening is you'll just have to pay the full price. But by then, we expect there to be data coming in. We'll have a bit more of an understanding of the processes and how it's all working and how the network's functional and so forth. And those people don't deserve to get the rebates. They don't deserve to get the continuous time and service bonuses that we're going to be rolling out over time. You people that are here right now are the people that we used to say this about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when we only had a couple hundred. You are the beating heart of the network right now. You're the ones that are sticking with us, even though right now there are a lot of conditions and circumstances that would cause a lot of people to say, oh, I see this project doesn't have any answers. There's no data. Nobody knows what's going on. Management sucks, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we're hearing quite a bit of that, and it's okay because it's kicking the people out that don't belong here. The people that keep showing up to these meetings week after week after week, except for the weeks where I get tired and have to sit out. You're the people. You're the guys. You're the ones that we want. You're the ones that are going to be here 5 years from now. You're the ones that are going to make a shitload of money off of this thing, and you're going to provide a great data center that's going to kick AWS's ass, and it's going to ultimately allow us to unleash on the world a brand new novel architecture, something like the likes the world's never seen. So I'm really pumped and excited about this. I know that the licensing is going to take a little time to digest. There's going to be pluses and minuses and positives and negatives, and I know that we'll hear a lot of it in the Discord. And so please view and vent and say all of your opinions as you need to, and just keep it civil, and you know, make sure that you understand what's being said and repped and sold and talked about. Otherwise, ask questions till you can get it. We will have Gord build some guides on it, and ultimately this will go forward as just another facet of the product and allow us to build out the product and project exactly the way it needs to be done. Okay, so about 35 minutes. That's about what I expected to run that on. Going to open it up for the questions now, and I'm sure that you'll, in the process of these first questions, start to come up with some. So let me see who I have on the question panel. Come on up, Shadid.
Hi, man. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing?
Good. I'm hearing a lot of good stuff, which is awesome for the project. Let me ask you a question about the data sales side. If I want to sell the data, is there a platform, excuse me, that the company can provide for me to do it? So I'm not a super tech guy for me to create a similar platform to like Dropbox software that I can go to clients. I have a lot of people that have petabytes of data that they just archive, and these are a lot of council legal archives that need to be archived that I can resell them. But I want a platform, and I've actually talked to a few developers to be able to create it, but I want to see if you guys already have it that I can kind of configure, maybe change the logo or something and then sell the data. Is there such a thing that you guys have thought about?
Yeah, so here's the simple answer to that. Yes. And in fact, not just yes, but this is exactly what we're focused on. What's happened here is that we realized pretty early on last year that selling to retail was not going to really be a productive enterprise for us. People that are on AWS probably are going to stay there for the most part. And that what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go upstream to their partners and consultants and the people that they trust and get those people to use our service. And those people are called MSPs and CSPs and consultants and cloud service consultants and blah, blah, blah. And people doing applications like you're talking about. And when we go to do the product launch, that is the partner that we are mostly going to be focusing the launch towards. When we brought on board one of our stakeholders, he's Chaz. He's in the audience today, and he was up on stage a couple of weeks back. Chaz has done a really important thing for us in that he actually ran a single data center earlier in his career, and I think had a really successful exit with it. But what he provided was a whole set of templates of a partnering program. Now, I've had a long history in doing distribution and building reseller programs and so forth, but this was enormous because essentially brought forth the docs, the licensing, the pricing strategies, and all the stuff. And all I have to do right now, and I'm working my way through it, and we'll have it done obviously before the show, is get it all tweaked and tuned and tailored and then put together so that we can then immediately start onboarding those partners at product launch. And what will happen is you will be able to purchase storage from us on one of two tiers of programs, right? We haven't named them perfectly yet, but you can just consider them as sort of like an affiliate program where essentially all you're doing is going out, you're a hunter-gatherer, and you're finding customers and bringing them back and dumping them at our doorstep, and we handle all the billing and we handle all of the support and all the stuff, and you get an override on that. And then the other one is a true partnering kind of a situation where you sell our stuff, but you still end up having the relationship with the customer. You have the support, relationship. You do all of the stuff, and of course, we give you a bigger profit slice of that so that you can support it. And then ultimately, you make more money and so forth. You can even take that and extend it to the point where you are running all the relayers for your customers. We have a couple of partners that are doing that. So yes, storage partners are the primary focus, doing exactly the kind of stuff you just said. That must have been a great answer, huh? Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next question here then. I thought we might get a follow-up there. Lucio. And I'll leave Shadid on stage in case he's just having some connection issues. Lucio, go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for everything that you're doing. My question is around the licensing that you talked about. What will it look like for I'm a DIYer because I didn't get in with the XA Miner yet. If I buy a license and I already have existing data on there and stuff like that, how does that transition look like from not having a license to being licensed?
It'll be seamless. What'll end up happening is you'll get a license key of some sort, and you already currently have a identifier. It's called a pub key, and your public key is cryptography. And so at the end of the day, all we have to do is associate these things. There's going to be a key cloak login and capability there, and once we tie those together, then on the back end, what we do is we tie them in with our contractor. And our contractor looks out and says, does he have a valid license key tied to his pub key? And if he does, then fine. All of that data that's on there gets to continue to stay on there. All of the future data that's coming will flow through just fine, and everything you built up to date will be fine. You'll just need to add the license key in there, and you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Sure. Calling Hells.
Hey y'all, can y'all hear me?
We can.
Hey, thank you. Hey, thanks for hosting this. Been here for a little bit, and it sounds great for a project. So I'm a current DIYer right now, and I'm very excited to hear about the licenses. One of the questions I had is, I think there was a little blurb you said that Gord was going to make some guides later on. Maybe something we're expecting the next week. Is that related to the licenses? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he's the guy who puts together our guides right now, and we're right now in the process of shipping an Examiner out to him so he can update and get the guides on the actual hardware piece squared around a little bit better. But yes, I expect that he will build some solid guides out on each individual of these product licensing tiers, how to become a partner, any of the questions that will typically come up. Look, this is an announcement. Please understand that the stuff is not yet shipped, but it's not going to take us all that much to put it into the thing. We will start selling it next week, and it will be available pre-launch, because it's just all it is a matter of building in the key club databasing and tying the license keys in with contracting. And we already had a sprint in place to actually be able to segregate contracts, because we knew we had to do this. And look, let me tell you one little thing really quick about why we're doing this, which is, we definitely need to pay our developers. I mean, we've got to find a source of funding, that keeps them in the thing. And we also want to keep our DIYers on board. And, I think everybody was watching in horror in some ways, thinking, oh my God, Examiners are going to take over the world. Well, that's true. They are. You just get to have one no matter what. So at the end of the day, we wanted to keep those folks, you on board and going forward. But there's also a thing going on right now, and it's not like it's not a thing that we haven't talked about a lot. We have. Some of the other permissionless networks out there right now are undergoing some extreme amounts of supervision and regulatory challenges. And with the USA government just releasing a new sort of oversight document that now starts to sort of give a portfolio to the CFTC, SEC, DOJ, and so forth, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And so anybody who's here in crypto for the anonymity and the ability to permissionlessly put something up and not have to be known who you are and so forth, and love freedom and all that sort of stuff, look, you are never going to have that world. I mean, if you want full anarchy, I get it. But at the end of the day, there's just too many choke points. There's just too many places where the regulatory agencies could get in and checkmate you. And maybe someday in the next 5 or 10 years, we do ultimately are able to abstract out Web3 in such a way that it is a permissionless, completely decentralized and completely self, service type environment. But even then, I think there's going to be challenges. Just getting money into the crypto is a major choke point in getting it back out. So anyway, the point I want to make there is that we're seeing online with some of the other projects, including the project we forked from, where the four horsemen, as they call it, the illegal materials that are being stored on these networks are becoming just absurd on the network we came from, apparently it's a majority of the stuff that's on the network, and they're getting takedowns, voluminous amounts of takedowns every single day. Talking about like child porn, terrorism stuff, illegal software, everything that's illegal, and this helps you in a way to say that you can now be almost certain. See, in the other way we were going to do it with just XMs and DOIers living together, there wasn't really any way initially for us to say that you were going to be able to be certain you didn't get any of that type of material. Right now, it could be living on your network. By the way, you could have illegal material on content on your network, on your hosts, and so this kills that. This kind of just kills that. If it shows up, and if law enforcement shows up with evidence and proof of it, we'll go ahead and we will tell the relayer customer, you got to stop. And if you don't stop, then you get nuked off the network and it goes away. So it's a really critical part of why we're doing this in order to protect you, and in order to protect us, in order to protect our customers, and build out a real cloud services network. So sorry for that long answer, but I really felt like it was necessary right there. Go ahead. All right, we'll take the next questioner then. Mr. Aquatron, come to the stage.
How's it going?
How you doing?
Doing all right. I got a question about NFTs related to storage.
Go ahead.
Okay. What is, I mean, I'm sure y'all have big capabilities, but as far as like NFT projects, are they able to host or store their metadata and whatnot on the Steer Prime network as far as that goes? Or what's the quality of service that would be for that?
Well, first of all, let me make sure I understand the question, because I feel like you're asking about another project that needs to store data on our network. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right, like let's say somebody's got an NFT project that's high quality art, and they need somewhere to, like I guess right now they use IFTTS or something like that, but they're looking for something that's more, I know y'all are still going to probably be somewhat centralized, but where they can store their metadata.
Okay, so I didn't have the full understanding because I misunderstood when you said NFT. So look, I've kind of joked a little bit about this. I mean, I get NFTs and I understand what they represent, and I think in the future, there's going to be a whole bunch of different kinds of NFTs that are going to do a lot of different things. But to be frank about it, right now, the value of hosting NFTs is really low. I mean, it's super, super low. We can't really charge the kind of money to make it valuable commensurate with what the payload is that's being stored. We can't like charge them, $1,000 a terabyte or something like that in order to make it profitable. They're going to get in at the same $6 to $10 a terabyte that everybody else is going to get in at. And when you start talking about how big JPEGs are, they aren't big; they're tiny. And if NFTs start becoming
32 gigabytes of data or something like that.
Yeah, for an entire project. So, look, I think IPFS is probably going to be the place for that for a while to come. I'm not saying we won't accept it or we won't have ways to make it, work. But what will end up happening is some enterprising person is going to need to stand up a relayer and then onboard those NFTs. And then in that case, it's a commercial thing versus being the thing that where, people go out and look for decentralized self-storage and so forth. I don't think that is going to be a thing on our network for some time to come. So it will end up having to be a thing. Hey, where do I store my NFTs? Oh, this organization over here runs a relayer and they give away, whatever, 50 gigs free, so you can use them and it's immutable. Go ahead.
Could the NFT project itself set up its own relayer to host its own NFT project? That could be something else too.
Yeah, it could. It could. And if it's somebody, like even an exchange, like, you could see somebody like OpenSea or somebody like that, actually
I'm
running a relay.
on the Zilliqa blockchain, there's a couple NFTs that are really taking off, and they got like storyline things and games. They're looking at building out like RPG type games that are based off NFT. They're trying to take it into a whole nother area besides just the NFT art itself. They're trying to interplay other things to it. So I was kind of just I know they're looking for other places to store their data and host things, and I thought, man, I wonder if Sia Prime could, if they could use that.
I think so, and I think there will be ways to do it. I don't think we'll be the natural lead in for crypto immediately, but I think there's ways that it can get done, and maybe ways that make it better than some of the other ways that are out there.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all I want to know. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alan Hells, do you have another question? Can't hear you. All right. Looks like our friend Shadid is back for a follow-up.
Yeah, I don't know why. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, great. So just to understand, the option one, you already have a web platform that I can put my own logo, license it from you, and then basically sell the platform to the people that I know, and you guys can manage it.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm already doing that. I don't know if you know or not. I have a whole sales staff team that does inventory management. We don't own the software, we don't support it, but we just sell it, and we collect royalty, based on each subscription that we sell. So if
and that's actually that'll be easy for you to do. The only thing you'll have to figure out is where does the relayer live, right? Do you provision relayers individually with your customers that buy this, or do you run the relayers for them? Do you run one master relayer for all your customers? Do you run 1,000 relayers? Do they run the relayers? That's the only real big question you're going to have to answer.
Okay. So let me think about that and see how these customers would probably want it. All right. Well, I'll get in touch with you and see how I can test this platform.
And you should talk to Master HW after this about potentially becoming a trialer, and then you'll get an understanding of what it means to actually run a relayer. There will ultimately be some cloud-based relayers that we provision and run for people, but I don't know how much sense that's ultimately going to make, because if we host a cloud relayer and we're onboarding people from all over the globe, and they're sending their data to us, and then we're turning around and sending it back out into their own locality, it's not going to be a great strategy. We could certainly put a big mesh network around the globe of cloud servers that would host this, but then it would be very centralized, and it would just create another layer of complexity and ultimately a two-hop situation to go up to the network, whereas them provisioning and running the relayer themselves gives them so much more control, so much more flexibility. And yeah, they do have to stand up a VPS, they do have to stand up a box, or they do have to, have the ability to administer it. But at the end of the day, it's not that big. I mean, it's not that hard. It's we're going to make it really easy. We're building the app for it right now, and so yeah, talk to Master.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Cool. My man's back. I guess he had another question. Go ahead, Howling Hells. Somehow you jumped in front of everybody, so go.
Are y'all able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I had some audio issues. Thanks. I don't know what happened. I just had two remaining quick questions. The first one is, eventually I'm gonna get that XA miner, but in the meantime, the software provided, will that still, will that, well, I guess that answers my own question, which is XA's miners, regardless, will permanently be the first round to get data, and then after that, the DIY miners with the software, or is there a different concept now that it's mandated?
Yeah, it's a different concept now. It's not going to have that specific scenario. Certainly, we're not trying to kill the Examiner sales, because I'm going to tell you that I want to kind of explain how this whole pricing sort of architecture came about. And so this is it. Right now, if you were to build the flagship box that we build, there's about $600 worth of components that go into making the computer itself. It's like a $190 motherboard. You can't get it any cheaper than that. Not the boards that we're buying. We buy 400 or 500 at a time. We're getting them at that price, so you're not going to get a better cost on that. You could find a different motherboard, yes, but in this case, let's do an apples to apples. So you buy this embedded systems motherboard. They're all about that price and zone. You put in a low power Intel processor. We've been doing mostly Celerons, so you're talking about $100. They're supposed to be like $60, but at the end of the day, what happens is the platforms that we're using are Coffee Lake, tend to be the ones where you can get volume motherboards. So you got that RAM, nice system drive, few other components, fans, things like that. By the time it's all said and done, to actually spin one of these things together, you got about $600 worth of cost. The chassis, a couple $100 to have them brought over from China. So maybe you could get in for a little bit less, but it's not going to be, you're not going to build one of these for $200. You're going to end up spending close to that same amount of money. Right now, to buy 4 Exos 16 terabyte enterprise grade drives, you're going to spend about $295 a piece. If you really wait for deals and promotions, you can get like $294 or $293, but you're not getting them much cheaper than that. So you got that $1,200 worth of hard drives that go in there. So at the end of the day, it's $1,700 to $1,800 worth of hard costs that you would have to pay, same as we have to pay. Now, you might already own some of this stuff, so I'm not drawing any conclusions there. I'm just saying, if you're coming in fresh, it's like $1,700-$1,800 to go ahead and spin one of these things together at cost for everybody. Nobody gets much better than that. Then we have a 40%, actually a 42% rebate, which is $1,500 when it's all said and done. So then the cost on the unit is $34.95. So there's about $220 worth of profit there, right? So that's what we turned around and ended up charging for that software license, right? So if we're giving you one of these units at essentially the same price that it would cost you to build one yourself, and we're going to handle warranty, repairs, and replacements all in one place, and we're going to give you dedicated support on the hardware and the software. We'll give you dedicated support on the software, obviously, but we're not going to support your hardware platform. If your hardware platform is having problems, that's you. You're going to have to figure that out as a DIYer. Why wouldn't you buy it from us, right? And so we don't think that the hardware sales are going to decline at all. In fact, I think, in the push to becoming the next Helium and getting 500,000 providers on the network, there's going to have to be a combination of a lot of different ways of getting storage providers to sign up and come aboard. And so that's the answer to that. There won't be any favoritism, because everybody will have an Examiner. There will just simply be different sort of versions of Examiners. Cool? I'll take it as being cool. Monkey Harp, come to the stage.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I just had a quick question on the subscription. I'm assuming that the mandatory subscription also applies to those owning the official Examiner hardware. Is that true?
Well, it's included. You aren't going to have to pay anything extra. It's not like you got your Examiner and now you're going to have to pay some more. No, it's built in. The license will. The only difference is, if you currently have an Examiner, you don't have a licensing statement on it, and that will get sent out to you in the version 1.0 upgrade. And if you have an Examiner, maybe you notice this, maybe you don't, but you don't have to screw around with upgrades, by the way. They just show up. And, a lot of you started out on version 6, some started out on version 4, version 3, 1. We're now on 0.84 or 8.85, I guess. And then when we get to the launch, it'll be version 1.0, and the licensing will be included in it.
Makes sense. Well, what about the subsequent years, the $99 a year? Do those still apply then?
I imagine the hardware that we sell will never have to pay that. Only the software subscribers. I imagine that the way we'll operate it is that if you ponied up in the early days to build this hardware component out, you bought an inclusive package that carries you for the full long run. There won't be a subscription upgrade there. Only on the software only versions.
Thanks much.
Cool. TV Filmer.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I just wanted to touch base regarding some of the regulatory compliance. I know you mentioned some details about that several weeks back, and it's been 2 or 3 calls that I haven't been able to attend. But what's the current status of building in and matching some of the regulatory frameworks, and where do you see that going as far as getting additional customers who have the requirements for those frameworks?
Well, I think the first framework to understand is going to be built into our initial launch, which is going to be geographical, requirements, where you're required to keep all of your storage within a very specific geographical zone. So that piece of compliance we're going to build in immediately, and then what will have to happen is we'll just have to validate that and run it past some governmental agencies as we spin the sales process out. So I would suspect that there will be some very initial work done on that almost immediately around and post the product launch. The stuff that gets a little more tricky, SOC 2, HIPAA, those kinds of things, those are going to be a little bit more challenging and are going to require probably for us to bring in a compliance expert who will help us to sort of navigate the waters and be part of the team. And one of the things hopefully you're seeing right now, I haven't done the announcement on this, so this is my bad. I should have done it before this, but we've onboarded about 4 new devs over the last couple of weeks, and they're starting to fill in roles like DevOps, right? We didn't have a DevOps person, now we do. So I fully expect that over the coming 6 months, couple of quarters, that we will get a compliance individual in some kind of a role onboarded and really start to tackle those things, because those are the ways we make easy wins, right? If we get those people in here, they can open up whole new market segments that allow us to really kind of crank. As of today, the only thing I could tell you, it's geographical, and that's already baked in. But beyond that, we are focused very hard on it. I would expect in the quarter following product launch, and hopefully very soon after that, we get some work done there. But see, here's the other thing about licensed software. When we have control of the software, payload of what it actually is, what a provider looks like, we actually have a much more robust capability to turn around to an auditor or a regulator and say, look, they're all the same. They all have the same exact capability here, and we can put payloads in there that allow the auditor to be able to validate that, for instance, that it's tamper-proof, or that it is exactly in a geographical location and not just on a VPN spoof or something along those lines. So there's going to be a lot of potential benefit that we do by selling these licensing keys to compliance. So there you go.
Yeah, and some of my interests actually lie in being able to somehow support the project because I have a background in that area. Specifically, some of the things that obviously you're familiar with the frameworks, but the details surrounding what particular actual capabilities are built into the product to meet specific requirements like data in transit, data at rest, and et cetera, et cetera. Is there any place where people who are interested in supporting the project with their skills can make contact with the team? Or
yeah, I mean, I just told you we're going to be looking for that. So at the end of the day, absolutely, you should definitely touch base with myself or Master HW probably would be a good ingress there. And yeah, we'd love to have a conversation with you and find out how it can fit together.
Sure, great. I appreciate it.
Sure, thanks. Everybody, bird up.
Hey, I just got here just a few minutes ago. I just was wondering, when are you planning on restocking and pushing out those invitations to buy XA miners?
What happened is we talked about the integrator ramping up. They are telling us that they're going to be, they're right now doing about 100, 125 a week.
Yeah.
There's about 600 or something left to ship, I guess. I don't know, maybe more than that, but somewhere in that neighborhood. But we're having a production meeting tomorrow, but they're telling us they're going to be able to ramp up to 250 next week. So it's going to literally be about 2.5 to 3 more weeks if they hit the numbers that they're saying they can hit, and some of the components that we're still bringing in get to their facility in time. If that's the case, if, for instance, next week, I'd hope this week actually was the 250 week, but if next week turns out to be the 250 week, and it turns out it looks like 250 is pretty doable and it's working,
Consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the list almost immediately after that.
And this isn't necessarily a follow-up question, but another question I have is, I was reading in the Discord, and I would say it would be a concern if we have a lot more space than is actually being used. And I know that we're not launched yet or whatever, but my question is to that is that one of the reasons why you're implementing some of the licensing features to bring down the amount of people? Because I remember last time you mentioned there's too many people, quote, like, actually coming in at once. I know that's a little scattered question, but if you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a trick question. It's a legit question.
Yeah,
it's definitely a legitimate question. But here's the honest answer to it. And in December, when 10,000 people showed up in the Discord and broke everything, we had to do some measures that were, somewhat, the antithesis of what people would have expected. I know, some of the people were quite surprised to see me, showing up every day in a trading channel and hollering that the price of our coin was too high. But it was. We printed a chart that looked just like Dodge, and I knew that chart was going to get printed. Look, I'm not a fortune teller, but I knew exactly where we were going to end up, and here we are. And, at the end of the day, I tried to kind of back people down a little bit, but it didn't work. What I should have done, frankly, here's what I should have done. I should have just sold it off. I should have just kept the price down artificially. Now, I'm just saying that tongue in cheek because, there's problems with that. And I didn't do that, and I wouldn't have done it. But at the end of the day, it needed to be done, and I wish somebody else had done it because we should be a lot higher right now, for instance, and we should be able to do a lot more things that we're going to have to grind our way back into. Because
so would you say would the ideal price for the coin be about $1 so it matches up with, or are you looking at the price of the coin almost as a stock in a way? Because it is
I don't think there's an ideal price in terms of, ongoing. I think what there is there's a price that makes this whole thing sort of organically work. There's a large amount of coins that are earmarked towards network development. And, what the YouTubers essentially saw is they saw a large amount of coins available that, they could essentially, calculate somehow out into, well, how do we move those coins from that wallet into our wallet? And of course we weren't going to allow that. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is building a cloud storage network. So when the numbers looked to me like they were going to blow up and we extrapolated them out, and it was looking like, in the course of, 5 or 6 weeks, soon we would have 8,000 or 9,000 providers running all sorts of shambolic bullshit on the network. And they would all be hungry for data and hungry for incentives and so forth. I knew we had to stop. So that's why we were sort of saying to people, things like the Pi units and really kind of trying to be a little rude with people. And and I've been called on this at length. I've gone back and forth with a couple people on our project who just didn't understand why things got nasty the way that they did, but they didn't understand that our network blew up. Our network literally blew up, and we had a couple of really challenging weeks that just almost, pushed us over the edge. And so, I wasn't in any real kind of mood to deal with it. So, people that want to call me bitter about the whole thing, fine, whatever. I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy most of the time. But when the project was in jeopardy, you goddamn well believe I was going to stand up and take care of it. Going forward, where this makes sense or where this matters is the examiner licensing strategy is going to collapse some segment of the network, because there's just some of you that are going to say, screw that, I'm not paying for development. It's not my job. And I get it. But guess what? You're not going to enjoy data from our sales efforts. And then you'll just have to go find another network. So it's going to artificially, in the beginning, control the size of the network. But I think ultimately the licensing will be the thing that catapults it and propels it into the stratosphere, because what the licensing will do is it will say to the average Joe, look, if I go out there and I say to grandma, look, this is just like, driving Uber, you can make some bucks on the side. But then somebody, calls her up on the phone and says, yeah, but, they have like child trafficking on those servers. They're not going to want to run that license. This is going to open up the licensing for everybody, because they're going to say, look, we know we're not going to be onboarding nonsense. We know we're going to be taking on legitimate data. We're protected. We know we're going to have support when we need it. We know we're going to have all that stuff. So it's going to probably present a little bit of a speed bump at first. But then I think ultimately it's going to be what propels us up the ladder to 500,000 nodes.
Yeah, and just a side note as well. As a person who works with AWS currently, and it is ridiculously expensive, what you're doing here is going to help, and you're going to make I believe, some good money. There's a lot of space to make some money here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and to that point, and to the original part of your original question, we set a number that we've talked about, about how much providers are going to earn on this thing. But I said all along, I said, don't take any of that, as hard and fast, because look, we've looked at the Wasabi numbers, for instance, and they aren't really $6. I mean, there's $6 as a loss leader, come on type price. When you really get down to it, Amazon's not $23. I mean, if you really want to take a look at AWS and, average out what somebody is ultimately paying, it could be anywhere from $30 to $50 to $70 a terabyte when it's all said and done.
It's ridiculous.
And the one part of AWS that never sleeps is their billing department. That sucker works perfectly. So at the end of the day, we're not fighting against $6. We're fighting against, probably some average $50 a terabyte number. And in that world, it's probably going to be quite likely that the cost of our service is going to be averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $15, somewhere like that. Especially, but that's still a huge, huge number, right? Compared.
Yeah.
And we're going to pass through 50% of that, or some number in there that's significant to you guys.
Yeah, and if the execution is there, I really hope to see the final result. I will be putting in an order for one of those XAs.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Pick boy. Got to come to the stage. Oh, he's gone. Trogue.
Hello.
Hi.
So a question about the licensing and I guess Exxon Miner, because currently I guess I'm a DIY, but I'm interested in the unit you were talking about. I guess my question is, if you buy an Exxon Miner, do you also get the unit or a license to do a DIY also at the same time?
Fascinating question. I don't know the answer to that. It might actually be something. I hadn't thought about it. It's actually an interesting question. I'm going to answer it. I don't know. But it will go back and be thought about, because it's if you do buy a hardware rig, maybe that's another benefit you get. So thank you for that. I can't answer yes or no, but we'll think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, looks like our queue's empty, and we made it through another one of these things. This one actually about an hour and 15 minutes. That's pretty good. Any more questions? You got about 22 seconds to go ahead and bring them together. I hope you got some really good fodder to go out and make those crazy videos. And definitely start posting those questions in the Discord. We will start putting some stuff up on social about this over the next 5 days. And by next week, you should have the ability to go ahead and purchase. And we are going to make it very much a thing that the sooner you purchase, the more benefit you get out of it. And then ultimately, you will be one of the founding members of the real network that's going to launch in Las Vegas. And damn it, I hope to see every single one of you there in Las Vegas, one way or the other. We're going to do a live stream. We might do something back and forth where we bring you people up on a screen talking to the entire room. So asking these types of questions to the community who's, drinking lots of copious amounts of alcohol. So that should be interesting and fun. I do have one last question. Let's bring up Frodo. Frodo, how's that ring doing? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. Okay. My ring's doing fine, thanks. Questions about the licensing models. I think you mentioned there's going to be 3 tiers, and unless I missed something, you mentioned the basic and the standard. What was the third tier? Is my first question, and then moving on from that, I'm guessing from the description that this licensing is going to be per provider, or is it going to be per subnet? I think it's going to be per provider, but maybe you could confirm that. And then finally, you mentioned the license was going to be a Docker image. Then later on in the conversation, there was some discussion about whether it would be open to all platforms. So if you could maybe just fill in what the plans is in terms of what OS it's going to run on.
Okay, so in order, the third one is the full installation, which will essentially be identical to an Examiner hardware that we build and sell with all features. So for instance, there might be some deprecated or slightly lower featured item on there, like remote access might only be able to talk to a couple of units on the standard, but it can talk to as many as you have on the full. We might have some accounting limitations. We haven't yet figured out exactly where the cutoffs and the breaks are yet. We'll have that all sort of worked out by the time we get to the end. But just know that if you're buying the full version, you're getting an identical unit to what the actual hardware that we're going to be building and selling to the world. And it's probably likely that we will force manufacturing partners into that version as well, that they won't be able to sell like a base CLI version. They'll have to sell that version. I knew I was going to do this because I'm getting old. Okay. Second question was per provider instance, you have a pub key which identifies you. That will be tied to your license key. So if you have a farm, you'll end up having to buy as many licenses as necessary to populate the farm out. We'll probably have some sort of volume licensing for farmers, just like we do for resellers and manufacturers. So that kind of covers that one. And what was the last question again?
So see the levels, the basic, the standard. I think you've answered that. There was
the OS. Yeah, it was the OS and the Docker image. So look, what we're doing right now on the relayer is this. To spin up a relayer, we put out a Docker image, and then we watched kind of as Windows users struggled with Docker images and configuration. And so what we're doing right now is we have a developer who's actually building a full UI application, and he's also building out, the smooth onboarding for a Linux base or other VPS type based Docker environment. And the situation's going to be very mirror-like to what we're doing here. So, what I think is going to end up happening is there will be a simple application you'll run as a Windows executable that will fire up the whole image and prepare it and run it. And then on Linux, it'll be more of a, command-driven Docker that, typical Linux nerds are pretty well used to and so forth. So it'll be pretty easy to put together. But I think it'll be pretty much the same as we're currently doing on Relayers, which is Windows and Linux. And then ultimately, if it turns out that there is a lot of Macintosh, desire, we might consider adding that to the platform. I don't know, not really sure yet. But ARM builds will definitely follow in place on the Linux side with the Docker containers. And then down the road, I suspect that somewhere later on this year, we will approach the NAS manufacturers and talk about getting, accepted on their platform as native applications. And in those cases, they would be the manufacturing partner that would end up, having to pay for that. If they didn't want to pay for it, then we would have a way for them to add it in there. But then it would only be active for like a period of 30 days, and then you would have to pay for it. And if you don't pay for it, then that pub key doesn't actually accept data, after 30 days, which is probably the way that it ultimately ends up working. But yeah, so we've kind of got that gamed out across all the platforms. Mac would be the only one that we probably would not do immediately.
And the price, I think you described it as standard at $250. Is that by standard? Is that the all singing, all dancing version, or what would the cost of that all singing, all dancing version be?
Well, the standard is $220 at this point, and it includes the UI and supervisor. But like I said, we're still working out, what the tier looks like. How there are less on that version than the full version. We just don't know yet exactly what that's going to be. But I can tell you, if it's me, I want that full version. I'm just telling you that right now, because we are going to make it so that thing mirrors, what it's like if you buy a real box. It's also going to be the thing that really, causes people to want to own the real boxes. But at the same time, that full version will likely have some potential for rebating that the other versions will have much less of.
Yeah, and I think also it gives the ability to build up the storage as the network grows.
And it might be that. It might be that too. We've talked about that as well. It might be that on the standard version and on the base CLI, there might be limitations. Maybe on the base CLI we don't have the limitations, but it may be on the full version you can run a farm up to something like 1 petabyte with no problem. Whereas on the standard, you can only run up to say maybe 100 terabytes, and then you run out of capability before you have to do something else. There's still some of those nuts and bolts that we have to work out, but at the end of the day, we'll make it fair and we'll make it reasonable, and it will reflect what we think is going to happen on the network.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Had to do this one. It's Jeff. Are you dumping the coin today, Jeff? Somebody said in the chat troll box on South Exchange saying Jeff's dumping the coin.
Hey, that's not me.
Okay. I didn't know, because he only spelled it with one F, so I never know.
What's up, dog? How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I got some questions. First
I remember
question is...
Okay, go ahead.
First question is, how giving the team free install for the first year, learn how that works, and we can teach the team users how to use it.
Actually, can you repeat that? Because your internet's cutting in and out pretty badly, and I only got every other word there.
Sorry about that. All right. How setting up community members, the community support members, first year of the company, so figure out what works can teach everybody else in the community how it works.
So I think the question is, how do we grow, support people in the community to help support the licensing scheme, since this is now going to be a pretty heavily corporate driven initiative? That's actually a pretty damn good question, because, you know, what a lot of projects ultimately end up relying on is that the communities become self-sufficient and the project has no real ownership or responsibility there. And by selling licensing, we sort of have just assumed 100% of the responsibility. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. It's definitely a great question that we're going to have to wade through. Right now, the thing we've said is the community leaders, support leaders, like you yourself, for instance, have done a pretty phenomenal job stepping up and just spending tons of time here answering questions, same questions over and over and over again. And, you know, I do have some compensation that I've set aside for that, but it's not formalized and it's not actually something that's laid out. And in fact, there's actually been some pushback internally in our stakeholder group that should, you know, where that should be coming from. So it stopped, right? We kind of like tabled it, but at this point, it's got to be done. And now it's going to have to be done in sort of a formalized way. What I'll say, though, is this. We're rolling out a ticketing system right now. That's one of the things on the corporate side for the Examiner stuff. So the ticketing system's there. We're taking interest for community supporters to come and work for the product team. So I suspect we'll just elongate that and maybe try and onboard more people and ultimately, you know, cover from top to bottom.
That sounds great. Okay, question number 2. Will Docker contain be similar to like Atomizer desktop? Are you looking at same kind of thing in terms of install?
You got to get that internet fixed.
When you can't hear me.
I got the Docker.
Is this better?
Try it again. Try your question again.
Okay. Is the Docker install a similar sort of appearance to Atomizer's dashboard in terms of the install, not the look and the feel?
Oh, okay. Well, there is no Docker install yet, but yes, it's Atomizer that's actually building the Relayer installer and the Relayer application. And so, yes, it would likely be similar to that, primarily because he and Cam are working together on a solid look and feel about how everything's going to work and look similar and be, you know, consistent. So, yeah, I think probably that would be a good, you know, sort of guess to make and think that would be the case.
Okay, cool. Because my follow up on that is that I ran the Atomizer's install off of Docker and Portain on my Mac, and it worked easy. So happy to have that if that more that we get to next.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's exactly that. And I think we'll play around and see what he wants to do there as far as, you know, the look and feel if there's some changes. But yes, that's a great understanding, and Mac probably will work out of the box. So there you go.
Last thing, can I get a shout out mention on the Jeff lunch at the Stone Crab on the 24th? Big raffle out there, everybody.
Hey, whatever happened to the raffle on how much data by when? We got to get Ian on the thing. Yeah, so if you didn't hear that because of the internet connection in Vegas, apparently there's a Sunday lunch that's being raffled off at Joe's Stone Crab, some place out of the way that I've never heard of. But I think, what channel is it in?
It's red and it's called Jeff Have Lunch or that. I'll find it and tag you. I'll put it in the events channel.
There's going to be a ton of this. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of this stuff in Vegas, so you got to join us because it's going to be a good time. A good time will be had by all. So anyway, thanks for the questions, man. As you're spoken, 2 people showed up. SWN.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
About the Docker container and the licensing. So if I have a DIY that's currently on Docker setup, is the intention there that getting the license is going to be a seamless upgrade to that DIY, meaning the wallet's going to stay the same and all those things. We're just simply adding the license to it.
Yes, and if it's the base case CLI version, then there won't really be any changes. The only difference will be you create a login, and you'll have your license key tied to it. If it's the middle or the top one, then yes, the idea would be that you would now get the UI, you would now get some things added on, but it would be your pub key that you've already stood up. It would be the stuff that you're currently operating, and depending on what platform you want to work on. I'm guessing that we will set it up so that if you don't want to use the full UI, you won't have to. If you have gotten used to just running everything from a command line, but you still want to have the full features of the standard or the top one, we'll give that ability for you to go back and work from the command line. But yes, it's going to allow you to seamlessly carry over these providers that you guys have already all stood up.
And another question about the what sounded like I heard another batch of XA miners is going to be released, and some waitlisters are going to be contacted.
Yeah, and I'm just working right now on how that process of turning the waitlist into something that actually works this time versus the way the waitlisted people worked last time, which was kind of challenging because it didn't really go in order correctly, but this time it will.
Okay. I don't mean to whine, but I'm going to whine. I missed out on the first round because of some technical difficulties. So are you intending to hit the people that missed the first round of waitlisting as your priority, or are you just moving through the list in another way?
Well, look, that's difficult. We will certainly take the waitlisted emails, and if they match people that already own systems, they will get pushed back around. They will get spun to the bottom of the list. But you got to understand these wait lists, the way these people, you could take a look at 5 emails and you could tell they're all the same person, just because of the way the email names are sort of set up. But it's really difficult because, you can't guarantee that they're the same person, if it doesn't match an already purchased email, or if it doesn't match an already purchased name, then it probably stays in its place in queue. But if we can clearly identify it as an owner already, it will get pushed to the bottom.
Okay. Just want to get that plug in there for the people who missed the first round.
Yeah, I mean, we're sensitive to that. And not only are we sensitive to it, but it helps us, right? I mean, we want more distribution of this network. We don't want it all living in, one guy's basement. I mean, that's not really a decentralized distributed network that we're trying to build. But so our goals are all aligned. That's the whole thing about this project, is everything in terms of incentives and goals continue to be aligned, and that's part of it. So there you go.
No, I totally hear you. I got properties in multiple locations, so I'm definitely on board with distributing this out.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it. Is it if somebody is owning multiple items and then they're actually distributing them to multiple locations, well, then that's a different story. It becomes something that's different. If it's on a different subnet, different physical locations, that's actually helpful to the project more than if they're all living in one, domicile, or one, business office, or one co-location center.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right. Hey, really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for coming out. You got your announcements for the day: licensing, new batches of XA miners shipping, the ability for manufacturers to get bulk licensing and build and sell their own rigs. Those will be coming probably later on this year as we push this out. Vegas, the ability to kick out the jams on the remaining 600-700 units that are still waiting to ship. They're really starting to fly off the shelf and out the door and onto the brown truck and into your house. So a big feature pack show today, and really appreciate you turning out. And I guess we'll see you next time.